Welcome everybody to number 118 of the Friday morning warm-ups, and we've got a usual mixture of things to do today, all following the usual procedure of starting off with a bit of clapping and then some long tones and the chromatic scale. So let's get started with a little clapping pattern. As always, you can be as creative as you like with these. If you want to stamp your feet in time at the same time as you clap, that's fine. If that's just too much and you might fall over, then perhaps just... oh, I've muted you or whatever. I can hear you in the background there. Right. Okay, you're now all muted. Funny what you forget over the period of only 2 weeks. Okay, let me just get onto the screen the clapping pattern. And this is a two-bar pattern. A lot of them are before they repeat. And a lot are kind of based on what's called a partido alto approach, where you have at either ends you have a steady beat on the beat, actually the clap being on beats 1 or 2, but then you have a lot of off beats in the middle, and it gives it that sort of release tension as it goes off beat and then back onto release. It's often known as a cascara because it's tapped out on the side of a drum by a Latin percussionist, for example. The side of the drum being called, the shell being called a cascara. And also, if you've heard of a thing called a montuno, this is a rhythmic phrase played often by a piano player. Now, what they're often doing are playing musical arpeggios from the song that they're playing, but they're putting them into a cascara pattern. And this particular one is one I spotted on one of John Seeley's tunes that he does in his big band, and it's Don't You Worry About a Thing by Stevie Wonder. So we're just going to clap this pattern, but you might be able to sing over the top of this the intro to Don't You Worry About a Thing by Stevie Wonder, which goes da 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 da. I think hopefully you'll recognise that from my singing. Anyway, let's chat. Let's just clap it. Let's get a decent walking beat going. Hopefully you can hear that tapping away in the background. So after 4, we're just going to clap that pattern just for just a minute. 2, 3, 4. Bum 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 bum. Last time. Bum 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 bum. Oh, right. If you get a chance, go and listen to "Don't You Worry About a Thing" by Stevie Wonder, and see if you can clap that rhythm to the intro, which is played on the keyboards. Okie dokie, let's get our instruments. And we're looking at a couple of modes today, but they're all based in concert C. So I'd like you to, we're going to do a single note now just on concert C, just for a minute, just to get our fingers moving and our breath moving, get the instrument warmed up, get our fingers warmed up. So here we go, just for 1 minute. go. That was a minute, well, just over a minute. And it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes a minute is a very long thing. Sometimes it's a very short thing, depending on what you're doing. It's still a minute. Right. We are now going to play the chromatic scale, starting on concert C. So that's D for B flat instruments and A for E flat instruments. And we're going to just play it from the note C all the way up to the octave C, and then straight back down again in the usual way that we have been doing it recently. So let's go back to a slower tempo than we were walking earlier. So chromatic scale, concert C, D or A for the other guys, and here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You always try singing it if you haven't got an instrument in your mouth. After 4, and again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dun, 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 beep. Oh, a bit high. Now let's move up that tempo and same thing, but do it at this speed. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do a couple more now. We'll leap up in tempo to 160 beats per minute. So that's the tempo you're playing at. These crotchets. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And just for the sake of it, let's go right up to 200. And I know it's easier on some instruments than others, but we'll do it anyway. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The chromatic scale. Okay. Now, if you'd like to get hold of your exercise sheets, we'll start looking at modes again, because we did it 3 weeks ago on the last session. We looked there at a couple of examples of modes. And just to put you back in the picture, if you're not familiar, when we're talking about modes in the case of modern music, what we're talking about are playing the major scale, but starting on a different note to the root note. So, for example, just take C major. The scale, as we all know, is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. And that's the C major scale. If you were to start on the note D and play up to D, so it's still an octave, it's still all the notes from C major, but it's going to have a different sound. For a start, it's going to have a minor third on the third note, and it's going to have a minor seventh as well. So it's going to have a different sound, and that's known as the Dorian mode. So when you're starting on the second degree of the scale, just have a quick example. Here's a major scale. Okay, and just typical major sounding scale. I'm going to play the same scale, but starting on the D. Yeah, second note up. It's got a different sound altogether. Not just higher pitched, it's actually got more of a minor sound. And so by starting on different notes of the major scale, you get these so-called different modes. Now, you need to look them up if you're not familiar with all the different names, but Dorian is the one we did look at a couple of weeks ago. And today we're going to look at the two major modes other than the major scale itself, and that's the mixolydian mode and the Lydian mode. The mixolydian mode starts on the 5th note of the scale. In other words, if you're in C, it will start on G. That's in order to get the notes. It can start on any note, of course, but to get the notes of G mixolydian. So that's one way of thinking about this, is that G mixolydian is from C major. G mixolydian is from C major. What we're going to look at today is the comparison between two modes starting on the same note. How does the mixolydian and the Lydian scale differ from the major scale? So we're going to be starting on the same root note every time this time. Now we've seen where they come from. So let's get started, and we're going to start with the top line of the exercise sheet, which is simply the major scale, just to get that in our heads and under our fingers. And so we're going to be playing the top line. Let's just play that once across. After 4, just literally the C major scale up and down. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as always, we'll do it 3 times. So here we go for the second time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's a good old, very familiar major scale. To be specific, it is actually also a mode, and you can call it the Ionian mode. It's not often referred to as the Ionian because we know it so well as the major scale. But because every mode, whatever note you start on, has a different name, it's called the Ionian mode. If you're playing strictly modal music, where the chord changes tend to be very infrequent or unrelated to the previous chord, then that's when it's more likely to be referred to as the Ionian mode, when you're actually playing music of a modal style. Right, let's go on to the second line, and this is where we see the mixolydian scale, this time actually starting on the same root note. So this is for comparison reasons. So rather than with saying it's from the one that's from C major starts on the 5th degree, this is what it looks like when it's starting on the same note. And this is the thing to remember. It's the big difference between the mixolydian mode, or the only difference in fact, between the mixolydian mode and the major scale, is that it has a flattened 7th. So the last but one note is flattened compared to the major scale. Now you've all got, you're in different keys, so you'll have to look at your own sheet to see that. But if you look at the 7th note on the second line, you'll see that's a semitone lower than it is when it's in the major scale. And that is the difference between the mixolydian and the major scale. It's the only difference. But it does give it a different sound. So let's play line 2 now, and you'll notice when you get to the 7th note, you're a semitone lower. Let's play that 3 times. Here we go. The mixolydian mode. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. And again. Yeah, slightly less, a little mellower sounding than the major scale. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Now, if we could just talk in terms of C major, just for, I know it's different for other instruments, but C major. Um, C major, as we just said, is just all the natural notes. C mixolydian will have the seventh flattened. And in the case of C, that means it's the B. The B will be a B flat. Now, the interesting thing is that suddenly becomes, also it starts to look like it must come from a different original scale, and it certainly does. Because we all know, I think we all know, that a key which only has one flat, a B flat, is F. F major. If you look at a key signature for F major, it will have just one B flat. So therefore, if you're following this, C mixolydian comes from F major. And it certainly would do because it's the fifth degree of F. F, G, A, B, C. So C mixolydian is from F major. And the reason we're doing it this way today is just to see the difference between the major and the mixolydian. But in fact, as I've just said, C mixolydian comes from F major. And if you're on a saxophone or a trumpet, and then you'll see that yours comes from likewise from the fifth degree of a different key. But you can see what key it's coming from just by the combinations of the flats or sharps which are in that scale. Right, good. Okay, now let's move on to the next line, and this is an exercise based on the that mixolydian mode. I've actually called it mixolydian scale. I ought to have called that mixolydian mode. It's from the third line, exercise number 1, and it's just the same mixolydian mode, but we're just going to give it a pattern, and this is going up in thirds. It's quite a common way of practicing a scale. So we're just going to do the third line, exercise number 1, all the way across after 4. Let's just slow it down a little bit because there's a bit more to think about here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just gather the troops and have another go. 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can tell, even if you might not be able to tell exactly why, you can tell it's got a different sound to a major scale. So looking around, I eventually found that there are tunes written in these modes, and in particular, you may recognise the introduction to the song "Bittersweet Symphony" by the Verve, played on a string section with a string section, and that song is written in the mixolydian mode. What that means is there's a collection of chords in there which come from the parent scale. So if you're in C mixolydian, that will be F. The chords come from F, but the song feels like it's home on the C, or C7 sometimes, but C normally, meaning it's rooted in C, but the chords come from the parent scale. Right, here's a little tune which is an example of a melody which clearly ends on concert C, or has that sort of sound, but not C. Sorry. Where are we now? Do 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 do. Yes, yes, it does sound like it's ending on C, but it's got a flattened seventh. So we're just going to play that tune, and then if you like afterwards you can go and have a listen to it and see what you think. Let me just get the tempo right. We're going to play it a little bit slower than you'll normally hear it on the record. So we're on the A Bittersweet Symphony now. The rest at the beginning, so watch out for that. It starts on the end of the one. Oops, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, if you've just seen that for the first time, that might not be straightforward to play, but if you've had a chance to practice it beforehand, then let's do that one more time. No, 2 more times. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just playing a C chord at the end to show how it feels rested at that point. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and so that's just a couple of examples there of playing the mixolydian mode. And there's stuff on the internet if you want to look it up and research it a little bit more. But what we're going to do now is just look at the other major mode which exists derived from the major scale. There are only 2. The mixolydian mode is one and the Lydian is the other. The others tend to be minor based, and we'll look at them another time. So we're now going on to the Lydian mode. So just look at the major scale again. Just recap that. Okay, as we all know it. Look at the Lydian mode, and you'll notice that it's the same as the major scale, but it's got a sharpened 4th, and that's the difference. So we're comparing it to the major scale. The Lydian scale has a sharp 4, and this gives it an unusual quality, which we'll think about later. So let's just play it. Lydian mode, or major scale with a sharpened 4th. So we're on the line that says that. Lydian. Here we go. I'm not actually sure where the names come from, but apparently they're all Greek tribes. That's probably because it came from ancient Greek music. Here we go. Lydian scale. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sharp 4. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we go. If you look at the version I've got on the screen, you'll see that's the you can see there's just that one sharp on the 4th note. So compared to C major, that's the 4th, which is raised a semitone to make it the Lydian, and it's an F sharp when you're in C. And what scale or what key has just F sharp in it? Of course, it's G. So C Lydian is derived from G major. And if you go to the root note G and go G, A, B, C, sure enough, it's the 4th mode of G. So that's the other little bite of information to store away. Lydian is the 4th mode of the parent scale. And it has a raised 4th compared to the major scale. So they're the two little facts. Now I know this does take a long time to assimilate all this information, especially when there's all sorts of keys and there are all sorts of modes and all sorts of ways of playing it on your instrument too. That's another thing altogether. So don't expect this sort of stuff if you've not done it before. Don't expect it to all suddenly make sense like the first time you hear it. You do need to think about it and see it from different angles as well. Think about it in terms of the parent scale. Think about it in comparison to the major scale or minor scale, and see how it differs, and so on. And also listen to some modes as well, because a lot of music, most music we know is written in the major scale. There's an awful lot in the minor scale as well, of course, but there are lots of songs written in modes. Man on the Moon by REM is in a minor mode. And as you can see on the bottom line of this, a theme from E.T. But we'll come on to that in a second. Let's do exercise number 2. This is the Lydian scale, and it's just doing another up in thirds exercise. So we're just going to practice the Lydian scale in ascending thirds. Second line from the bottom, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a little an aside now. You can switch off for a minute if you've had enough of the theoretical stuff. But the Lydian scale is not an easy one to write a tune in. Whereas the Lydian, you get quite a bluesy sound with the mixolydian. Sorry, a bluesy sort of sound, a rocky sort of sound. With the Lydian, the difficulty with the Lydian is that starting on the root up to the fourth, you've got the tritone. So you've got this very unstable interval actually on the root. And that tritone is the pair of notes which causes harmony to want to move somewhere else. So if you've got that tritone actually in the root chord, in the root part of the harmony, you're never going to feel stable landing on the root chord or note of a Lydian melody. It's always going to want to shift, because that pair of notes, the root to the sharp 4, wants to resolve a semitone down on one note and a semitone up on the other, which is elsewhere. It's not where we're trying to land it. So so what tends to happen is the melodies in the Lydian mode tend to shift about between major and Lydian. They don't stay there. And this is an example with the next thing we're going to play. By the way, I had to look this up. I didn't come up with this flying theme from E.T. as an original thought. I discovered it by watching a video by a guy called David Bennett. He does very good videos on modes, and some of the information that I've picked up is from his videos. David Bennett, I'll give him a plug because he's very good. He's only about 15 when you see him, but he seems to explain modes very well. Okay, we're going to have a go at doing the flying theme from E.T. Hopefully you'll recognise it. It's in a strange time signature, so which is more challenging to play. I'm going to play it slowly. It's in 6/4, so we need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So do your best counting. It's been a nice challenge for me as well. So we're going to play that bottom line there, and just to point out where the mode comes in, you can see on your sheet, it's actually in bar 3. You see the accidental there? That's the note which indicates it's coming from the mode that we're talking about, the Lydian mode. So the first part of the tune actually is in the major. Anyway, I'm doing an awful lot of talking, so let's just play an excerpt from the flying theme from E.T. And don't forget, I'm going to count in 6 before we start. Don't jump in after 4. After 6, 1. Here we go. Let me get ready. Or bet, yeah. There we go. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, that's interesting, wasn't it? I'm going to do that again. I'll count my way through it and see if that helps. I don't know how some of you might have found that very easy. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Playing in different time signatures is not natural, is it? One more go and then we're finished on these 2 examples of modes. 1, 2, sorry, here we go again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And it's that third line which suddenly gets a little bit brighter. And that's the Lydian mode. The Lydian mode has been described as the brightest, most sunlighty of all scales, because that raised fourth. Every other scale has got something flattened in respect to the Lydian mode. So if you go from major to Lydian, suddenly, whoa, the sun comes out. That's one way it's been described. Anyway, let's move on, and I hope some of that was interesting or useful, or what was that all about. And let's just move on to the last part of the session then, because time's moving on. So I'm just going to play some chords. These are from the mixolydian mode, so going back to the mixolydian mode. Those of you into the rock idiom, when you hear chords going down from the major to another major chord, down a tone, such as Sweet Home Alabama, there's one by Fleetwood Mac, I've forgotten what it's called, Go Your Own Way, that might be in it, and Sweet Child of Mine as well, Guns N' Roses. They're all in the mixolydian mode, and that's what these are. So I'm just going to strum those chords. You can play the root mixolydian scale over it if you like, just to hear it, or you can improvise, or you can practice your arpeggios, or practice your chord tones. Here we go. 1, just for a minute. Get the old egg timer going. 1. I'm going to do 2 bars on each. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next chord. Let's do that all again. 2, 3, 4. This is the last time. And There's your clue. It ends on the C, concert C, but it's got a B flat chord in it. Whoa. And that's the clue that tells you it's in the mixolydian mode. Okie dokie. Right, any questions on that? Just email me. I can do my best to answer. Let's finish there then. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. And after the little break, nice to see you all. And oh, there's Kay as well.